the chance to interview Michael Trerotola, who was training to be a U.S. Navy fighter pilot in World War II.
Well, of course, it was either you volunteer for some service or you kind of get drafted. That's a pretty good impetus to join.
So did you volunteer?
Yes, yeah. I didn't want to be drafted.
Yeah.
And I would rather be in the Navy. And when the opportunity presented itself for me to become a naval aviator, like I told you, sure, let's go for it. I figured if you can do it, I can do it.
So pack up your troubles in your old kit.
After high school, after I graduated from high school, like I said, was in June of 1942. I really didn't know what to do. Our studios weren't that busy during the summertime, so I took a job at Douglas Aircraft Company, making parts for this bird right here. And a machine shop, I ran a 4-spindle drill press. And I did that for 3 or 4 months. I joined the V1 program, converted to the V5 program, and then on March 3rd of 1943, I was called to active duty. And my active duty, believe it or not, was USC. And we actually lived there for about 3 or 4 months. And we studied things like Meet the MP1. These are some of the textbooks that we had. Mathematics, effects of flight, aircraft engines. These were enemy planes and Allied planes. And they would start out with slides and a projector in a darkened room. And they would flash it onto a screen. First they would start out like 1/10 of a second, and then you'd have to take a test to identify what airplanes they were. They didn't want us to be shooting down our own airplanes, so we had to say what the wingspan was, because the wingspan where you would approach the enemy airplane, we had an illuminated gun sight that projected up against the bulletproof glass. And it was this circle in mils, and each mil was a foot. So if you were firing on an airplane, it had a 43-foot wingspan, and you were behind it, but you filled it up in the gun sight, so it filled up 43 mils. And then you knew you had the proper range. Well, morale was very high. I mean, you know, what the Japanese did to us, and, you know, Pearl Harbor and all that, morale was very high. This 65 horsepower Porterfield. Now, I flew that, just had a 65 horsepower engine, and I flew this in Prescott, Arizona. They added what was called War Training School, and that was flying this little bird right here, 65 horsepower Porterfield. And then they were getting more pilots than they needed, so then they added Navy Prep Flight School, not pre-flight, prep flight, and that was 3 or 4 months at USC.
During Navy Prep Flight School, Mr. Trerotola learned how to fly his first planes, which led him closer to fighting in World War II.
After flying the Porterfield at Prescott, Arizona, then I went to Olathe, Kansas. This was during the winter time.
On October 1st, 1942, Naval Air Station Olathe opened. Many men and women learned flying skills. Here, Mr. Trerotola went into Navy primary flight training and flew the N2S Steersman.
Flying the Yellow Pearl, this baby here, and it was wintertime, and snow on the ground, and cold, and we used to have to wear a fur-lined flying suit. Your face is covered up, all you can have a couple of slits for your eyes and a little bit for your nose. And, well, our first formation flying, our first night flying, we had to do what was was considered a precision flying with it. They had a 200-foot diameter circle in chalk on a field, like a bean field out there, a level field, and they had a shack that had a wood stove in it, and the instructors would go in there and they would watch through the window, and they would have us, after the training session, you had to make 6 landings into that circle, and they made 3, you had to hit all 3, 2 main landing gear and the tail wheel all at the same time. And then I went to Corpus Christi, Texas. This was the spring of 44. The first few weeks we flew the Vultee with the fixed gear, single engine, and we learned to fly it. It was the first low-wing airplane, and again we had to do a formation flying, and we would do some radio navigation. In those days, radio navigation was very primitive compared to what it is today. And after that, we went to Kingsville. It's again in the Corpus Christi Naval Aviation. It's like Pensacola, and Kingsville is one of the outlying fields. And fly the SNJ. Now the SNJ had a couple of 30 millimeter, 30 caliber machine guns up here. You can see they're in this here, firing through the prop. And we would do gunnery and bombing and navigation, and we would do formation flying, formation takeoffs, formation landings, night flying, night formation, all the kinds of things that we needed for graduation. And then upon graduation from this, we would get our wings and our commission. And that happened, as far as I was concerned, October 18, 1944. And I was commissioned an ensign in the U.S. Navy. I got my wings, and I got married the same day. Now, after graduation, the selections were, they gave you a choice. What did you want to do? Did you want to be a carrier-based fighter pilot? Do you want to fly dive bombers? Do you want to fly torpedo planes? Or do you want to fly multi-engine airplanes? And actually, those choices occur when you leave flying the Vultee. You don't have anybody sitting up next to you showing you how to fly the airplane. You read the book, give you a test, and you go out there on the runway and you take off. After flying this airplane here, it had about 650 horsepower, and then going to the Hellcat with 2,000 horsepower. My first sensation at Daytona Beach, Florida, taking this Hellcat off, it felt like you're sitting there in the lobby of a hotel, and all of a sudden the hotel is out there in front of you. You're hanging on by your life. I flew the SBD in our squadron up in Seattle, Washington, because it was the only two-place airplane that we had assigned to our squadron. We were flying the Hellcat, and being that I was a photo officer in the squadron, every pilot has to have a collateral duty. Your maintenance, engineering, or something in addition to your primary duty as a pilot. Here's one more thing. If you go into combat, you're issued this. This is a map. mostly in the Philippines and stuff. No signs of silk.
Although Mr. Trerotola did not fight in World War II, he trained for over 3 years, and his service to our country is greatly appreciated.